enjoy it. And now I'd like to introduce some people here to talk about all things The Day the Earth Stood Still. First I have Scott Derrickson, the director. I have Jennifer Connelly here today. We have the producer, Erwin Stoff.
Here we go.
And the moderator, Michael Broidy. Thanks a lot for being here. Hope you enjoy it.
And Keanu! Says he loves me. Uh-oh, no mics! Oh, no mics! What? Yeah, no! Mics!
One moment. Keanu, thank you for that introduction. We're going to get right into things now. Scott, first question for you. Let's go back to the beginning. Early 1950s, the first day there stood still. Directed by a wonderful filmmaker named Robert Wise. You had a close encounter with Robert Wise. Why don't you tell us about that?
I have great personal fondness for Robert Wise. When I was a film student, made a short film that got into a film festival in Indiana. And I went to the program director who had set up a special presentation for Robert Wise, like a Lifetime Achievement Award, and I asked him if I could meet Robert Wise, and because I was a film student, I loved Robert Wise's films, he set up a private dinner for me, so I had dinner with Robert Wise as a film student, which was a seminal event for me. I told him that my favorite films of his were The Haunting and The Day the Earth Stood Still, and those were easily my two favorite Robert Wise films, and I asked him if he had any advice for me as a young filmmaker, and he told me that if I was interested in genre films, which I obviously was by the ones of his that I liked, he told me to make my first film a horror film, because he said a horror film will really show, what you can do as a director. And I kept that in mind, and I think that was one of the reasons why I made The Exorcism of Emily Rose as my first film. And I had no idea that I would be sitting here one day talking about a reimagining of his great film, The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Well, it's kind of like Destiny then, wasn't it?
It depends on who we ask, I suppose.
Erwin, speaking of talking about Destiny, I think there's a story that you told someone, as I've heard, 15 years ago when you and Keanu were prepping Speed. You were in somebody's office at Fox Studios and you saw a poster hanging on the wall.
Yeah, what happened was that this was actually not as it was being prepped, but after Speed had already been released and was a big success, I was in the then president of production's office at Fox, and behind his desk there was a poster of the 1951 Day the Earth Stood Still. And while I was waiting for him to come in, I sort of looked at it, knew the movie really well, and he came in and I said, look, forget about what I was originally here to talk to you about. What we should do is we should redevelop The Day the Earth Stood Still with Keanu playing Plot 2. So it seemed like a really good idea at the time, but as Hollywood would have it, he was out of a job in a few weeks. And that was sort of the end of that notion. And then, as destiny would have it, 15 years later, there was a draft that showed up on my doorstep.
Keanu, any of this sound familiar?
Yes.
No.
What was it, Erwin? Did it seem like a natural? Was it you knew another alien? That guy could play the alien. Yeah. Yes, I did.
It's more
You were right.
insightful, self-sacrificing,
Oh, that's right.
highly evolved.
Right.
Those were the qualities.
The good stuff.
Scott, what was it about the Robert Wise film that you thought would make an interesting thing to take a look at in a contemporary setting?
I think that if you're going to remake any film, let alone a classic, you have to have a good reason to do it. And I think different people have different opinions about remaking films, and especially remaking classic films. For me, I think it depends on the particular movie and why you want to redo it. In this case, it was the script. The script was already, it existed in some form, but still had a ways to go, I thought. But when I read it, what occurred to me was that the original was so a product of its time, that it was a film that commented so well on that early Cold War era and what was happening with humanity at the time, and the visual effects were so progressive for the time, and it was such an interesting and original film. And the idea of updating it made sense because the times have changed, and we're not dealing with the same kind of nuclear threat that existed at that time. The UN exists now, so the issues that the first film was dealing with are not as prescient as they are now, but we have different issues. It's a different time, different issues, and film seemed like a perfect venue to address some of those. And I also think that visual technology and visual effects, the story opened up opportunities to do some things that were original, some things that we haven't seen before, like the first one did. I think it was that, and then I think lastly, it's such a good story. And what was amazing to me as I would talk to people about it was how few people have actually seen the original film. And I felt that the majority of the movie-going audience deserved to hear this story again. It's because it's such an interesting one. The idea of an alien that comes to Earth and assesses humanity, assesses human nature from an outsider perspective is such an interesting tale. And it was one that I thought that contemporary audiences deserved a chance to see.
If I could just add, one of the really unique things about this movie and about the story is that we've all seen a lot of movies where we see the aliens, but there are very few movies, or none that I can really think of, where we can see ourselves as the aliens, wherein we see ourselves through an alien's point of view, and I think that that's one of the really unique things about the story.
All right, Scott, we have several clips to show you, and Scott, why don't you introduce the first one?
All right. Yeah, so we have a couple things to show you. This is just the first scene. You saw a bit of this scene in the trailer, if you've seen the trailer. This is a scene where Klaatu, played by Keanu, is brought to a compound where he's being held basically in custody. He's made a request to speak to the world leaders. He's got issues on his mind, and he's been denied that. And instead, he's going to be questioned by this official who works for the U.S. government. So we'll show you the scene, which we effectively call the interrogation scene.
Roll clip, please. About becoming Klaatu, what was your process, the internal process, and the whole physical taking on the movements of Klaatu? Can you talk about that?
I guess as a broad perspective, I just tried to have a kind of objectiveness about what he was looking at. He just objectified everything that he looked at. He was kind of an entity trapped in this human body, and I just thought of him as, since he came to be a kind of, to see, to judge, that when he looked out, he just was looking out. So there was a kind of objectifying quality to him, and a containment, kind of compression. I mean, and as opposed to the original, which was a little, Klaatu was a little warm and fuzzy. He was a little more human than human. I'm not that guy. But part of the story is as Klaatu kind of goes on his journey of seeing and looking, he is slowly affected by the humans and about, in a way, being human.
You said he's trapped in a human body, so that's sort of...
He's contained.
Contained in a human body. that sort of, I guess, is a hint that when we first see him emerge from his